Hello, and welcome to First Christian Church's Adult Fellowship Bible Study. Today we continue in our study of Isaiah with our focus on chapter 7 today. Scholars teach chapter 7 is a most debated chapter between Jews and Christians, mainly because of verse 14. Christians interpret it, at least historically, that is, as it's a direct prophecy concerning their Messiah, Jesus Christ. Jews interpret it to be simply a sign at the time in history concerning a historical event related to the threat of an enemy. So let's read Isaiah chapter 7 all the way through 1 through 25. In the New Revised Standard Version. Verses 1 to 9, the focus will be basically on, it's the prophet and King Ahaz speaking to one another, or exchanging ideas, for lack of a better term, concerning this Syria Ephraimite threat that's there. And verses 10 through 25 then are the signs that the prophet is giving from God that what will happen is part of God's plan. So let's read. In the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram, and King Pekah, son of Remaliah of Israel, went up to attack Jerusalem, but could not mount an attack against it. When the house of David heard that Aram had allied itself with Ephraim, the heart of Ahaz and the hearts of the people shook as the trees of a forest shaken before the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, "Go out to meet Ahaz, you and your son, Shalijah, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to Fuller's Field, and say to him, Take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smoldering stumps of firebrands, because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram and the son of Remaliah. Because Aram with the Ephraim and the son of Remaliah has plotted evil against you, saying, Let us go up against Judah and cut off Jerusalem and conquer it for ourselves, and make the son of Tabel king in it. Therefore, thus says the Lord of God, I shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass. It shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered, no longer a people. In parentheses. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you do not stand firm in faith, you shall not stand at all. Again the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol, or high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, Hear then, O house of David, it is too little for you to worry mortals, that you worry my God also. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child, and shall bear a son, and shall name him Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey by the time he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before those two kings you are in dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring on you and on your people and on your ancestral house such days as have not come since the days that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. On that day the Lord will whistle for the fly that is at the source of the streams of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. And they will all come and settle in the steep ravines, and in the cliffs of the rocks, and on all the thorn bushes, and on all the pastures. On that day the Lord will shave with a razor hard beyond the river with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet, and it will take off the beard as well. On that day one will keep alive a young cow and 2 sheep, and will eat curds, because the abundance of milk that they give. For everyone that is left in the land shall eat curds and honey. On that day every place where there used to be 1,000 vines worth 1,000 shekels of silver will come briars and thorns. With bows and arrows one will go there, and for all the land will be briars and thorns. And as for all the hills that used to be hoed with a hoe, you will not go there for fear of briars and thorns. But they will become a place where cattle are let loose and where sheep tread. There are some terms there, names, that we probably should cover first, because they're metaphoric, and otherwise they don't seem to have any real meaning. So let's look at them first to help us clarify a few things. Aram here is Syria, with its capital in Damascus. Israel here means the northern 10 tribes, the nations called Israel, as compared to the southern 2 tribes of Judah. And Israel's capital is Ephraim, or it's called Ephraim. Its capital is at Samaria. The son of Jabal probably refers to the ruler of Tyre in 738 BC, which is about when they think this occurred, which was would have been, he was over the Phoenician people, which are coastal people there south of Lebanon, that ruled the coast south of Syria, and they assisted that alliance to and took advantage of the situation to terrorize Judah during this time. If they weren't in full alliance, at least they were participating in that way. Fly and the bee used here are clearly metaphoric, scholars say. The fly here refers to Egypt. The bee refers to Assyria, and in these cases it's referring to the troops. They will come to Judah. Basically, they'll come to Judah's aid in the initial part of this to help make sure that the coalition of Ephraim and Syria does not destroy Judah. They will shave the feet, meaning here scholars say genitals. So not only the head will be shaved, but so will the feet. And also metaphorically, several scholars say they're referring to the extent to which the armies will destroy things. It'll be like shaving also. So a double metaphoric meaning, several scholars note. Water of Shalom or Salom is the springs and streams of Jerusalem and are tied to God's covenant. So Israel, the northern 10 tribes, has refused the covenant religion and attempted to destroy David's dynasty by defeating and replacing Ahaz, who is the legitimate king, with a Phoenician, by the way. So Ahaz is the target of a coup here, several scholars note, but the point being is ultimately that coup will fail to achieve its primary objective. Dr. Christopher Seitz, writing while professor of Old Testament at Yale, opens his commentary with this idea. He says, Christian theological perspective is founded on Matthew's New Testament use of verse 14 here. But it's not that doesn't mean, he says, the meaning is the same. Matthew is using that verse to then espouse a new theology. Isaiah's prophet concerning the Emmanuel there. But Christians say this has fundamentally, and their interpretation of verse 14 is it has fundamentally to do with the birth, life, and mission of Jesus of Nazareth, their Messiah. However, although there's not complete agreement on this, there is the major scholars in this area of the last 2 centuries especially, but more so in the last 50 years, applying critical interpretation of this chapter, have come to determine the idea that this Christian interpretation is probably problematic relative to using that verse for that purpose. Not Matthew comments. There is not a clear consensus, however, and so we get all kinds of ideas. But the trends are as follows. Christian scholars hold to the Christian theological interpretation, that is, that verse 14 is prophecy about the Messiah. Jewish scholars, literary scholars, and historical scholars at academic universities maintain a historical context to their interpretation. That is, they keep its setting in the 8th century to somewhere around 735. Some denominational Christian scholars have suggested that double fulfillment theology or interpretation may be a theory that we can use here, according to Dr. Bart Ehrman, who is professor of religion and the Bible at the University of North Carolina. Dr. Eugene Tucker at Emory University School of Theology, at the time that he wrote, says we must appreciate that a very deep gulf separates ancient Israel and Judah, as described here, from modern Western Christian thought. But if we use this ancient writing, he said, to try to put a Christian interpretation onto it, we should at least try to understand what it meant at the time it was written in the 8th century, which is nearly 3,000 years ago now. Israel, that is the northern kingdom or northern 10 tribes, and Judah, the southern kingdom, made up of basically 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, were in both in national crisis and theological crisis at the time. They believed they were under God. Both of them believed they were God's chosen people, and the only chosen people. And their faith was they felt was the only legitimate faith under their God. So these nations were both religious institutions and political institutions, so to speak. They believed their God, of course, was called Yahweh. However, the 2 countries considered one another at this time that the other half was not under God, since they had separated. There is no evidence that Christian faith concept had arisen at this time. In other words, 800 years before Jesus was born, roughly. So scholars argue that we students, as we study this, should keep in mind the historical context here as we study and attempt to discern what it means here in Isaiah chapter 7. This reading that we just had here is used heavily in serious religious debates between Christians and Jews, and even to some extent in Islam, between Islam and those. He notes, this is Dr. Bart Ehrman at University of North Carolina, he notes that debate is controlled much, though, by religious belief rather than the data. So there is not a consensus of interpretation because of religious scholars not being willing to interpret strictly based on debate. They say, well, I can only take it so far. My faith interferes here and I can't go past my faith. Consequently, opinions are strongly held and variable by religion, by denomination, and by institution, he says. He notes that the central point hinges on the word Emmanuel, and as the sign of Emmanuel, the signs of Emmanuel, and the sign of Emmanuel there being whether it's a young woman or whether it's a virgin. Academic scholars strongly argue this has a setting in the 8th century BC, and that setting is germane to the message that's here. It's delivered here by Isaiah to King Ahaz. He is addressing a historically known event that was about to happen at that time. So this is leading up to the Syro-Ephraimite War of 735-732 BC. That's what he's referring to, scholars say. Several names appear there that can be verified to be connected with that time. Judah, Israel, Syria, and Assyria are all there in historical events, and good information now available on what was going on at that time. When the metaphoric words are understood, then it begins to make even more sense. Assyria's king out of Mesopotamia, involving a big part of what is now Iran and Iraq, those areas, has come to power. That's basically what's setting the issue here. And he's building a very strong army and is beginning to absorb neighbors, with his ultimate aim of being he's going to take Egypt, and he needs to take care of those people who occupy the land in between, which would be Syria, northern kingdom Israel, and the southern kingdom of Judah, and some smaller allies around. He wants control of their land, and especially that long Mediterranean seacoast. We have to appreciate that in that day and time, ships just didn't automatically run out and sail a long way from land. They tended to stay close to that shore because of the navigational methods that were available. And so you needed to have control over that coast if you're going to move an army down to Egypt. The Ephraimite, Syrian, Philistines have formed an alliance now for their defense against Assyria, and they wanted Judah to join that. Judah's king Ahaz, who's the grandson of Uzziah, and his father, who also was king, Jotam. He is refusing to join that alliance. He feels like he doesn't want to upset Egypt. And plus he feels that it's a losing battle, so he's trying to hold his card so that when Assyria does take over the area, that maybe Judah will be treated better. Some scholars speculate. So the Ephraimite-Syrian alliance, along with somewhat of the support of the Phoenicians there, are going to try to destroy Ahaz, replace him with a Phoenician, and therefore destroy the Davidic dynasty, that is David's dynasty, that's ruling in the area. It appears here from verses 1 through 9 that Ahaz is considering joining the alliance, possibly in some form, rather than allowing them to attack and damage his army. Maybe somehow or another he can negotiate that out of fear. And Isaiah is basically reminding him they're going to get defeated anyway. So you don't want to do that. Verse 9 then ends with the key verse. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you shall not stand at all. The two countries had separated based on faith. If you then violate your faith and join back with the other 10, then you're violating your faith. That's part of how scholars interpret that. They have separated from one another. Those 12 tribes have separated into 10 and 2, with faith being one of the key issues. That is, a change in belief in the system. The northern 10 tribes is considered, at least by the southern 10 tribes, to have abandoned that faith. Somewhat likewise, the northern 10 feel the two southern tribes have abandoned it. So Isaiah is telling him to hold to your faith and trust God, as these people are not going to defeat you. He wants Ahaz to ask God for a sign to confirm to himself that it is God's plan for him not to join. Well, he doesn't want to do that, as he says he doesn't want to test God. Isaiah gives him a sign anyway. Whether you want to hear it or not, you're getting one, buddy. That sign is in verse 14. Some scholars suggest Ahaz's refusal here is a sign that he does not, in other words, that would reassure him that he has the faith, he's on the right side and so forth, if he would have the sign and recognize it. It was normal for kings of that day and time to inquire about signs from their prophets before battles, before major decisions and so forth. We see that all over the Old Testament. Dr. Bart Ehrman teaches that signs is related to the outcome of that impending war that's being given here. And therefore, if we look at the sign, it's near time. It's not some long distance. In other words, he's trying to express, very soon this is going to happen. This idea that this young woman is already conceived, that is, she's already pregnant, and she's going to give birth to a child that she's going to name Emmanuel, which means God is with us. In other words, that name, Emmanuel, means God is with us. She's already pregnant. And so we're talking 9 months or less, so to speak. Before that child is old enough to know right from wrong, these two kings facing you will take their armies home and leave Jerusalem. So that's basically where academic scholars, historians, and the Jewish scholars place this. The Jewish Tanakh, meaning their Old Testament, uses the word Amal, A-L-M-A-H here, which means young woman. And that's translated in the New Revised Standard Version and the Revised Standard Version as young woman. The Greek Septuagint, written somewhere around 300 BC, uses the Hebrew root Betulah, B-E-T-U-L-A-H, which when translated into Greek means Parthenos. which means virgin when translated into English. The King James Version, the NIV, and most Protestant Bibles use virgin there, so forth. Hence, part of the reason for the conflict is over the translation of what word is there. Dr. Christopher Seitz closes with this: Ahaz has refused to trust the prophetic word and the promise made to David. Thus, he has opened up himself. By refusing, he has opened up himself to the divine protection of God as well as his people now to suffer. He closes his chapter that we will see the consequences of that suffering, which is implied here in that there'll be nothing left in the land after the armies come through here. We will no longer have agriculture. Only thing you'll have is a pastoral setting. You'll be eating curds and honey, and that's all, which would be considered survival food. In other words, they're milking the sheep, fermenting the milk to preserve it, and they're having honey that can be stored for 7 years. Hope this gives you some idea of how the scholars, anyway, at least lead scholars in this area, modern lead scholars, look at this chapter. It's like I say, it's not clear cut. It's a difficult chapter to study. Hope you have a good Bible study, and we'll catch you in another lesson.